Okay, so hopefully my voice and connection is okay. So I will have a couple of questions. Okay. First one. One of them will be about Red Scare. The other one will be about universities. So and some criticisms that comes to these institutions from right-wing intellectuals, if you want to call them intellectuals. So you said in passing that sort of this Red Scare, this boogeyman communism or figure that was built in the US has sort of faded or is not as prominent right now. But watching the last elections and the debates that surrounded the last election, I kind of tend to think that Red Scare didn't really disappear in the US politics. That is, the idea of seeing socialism, while it's no longer called communism anymore in US, but these two ideas are the same. Marx used them interchangeably. That socialism is something to be feared. That there, right-wing intellectuals are continuously spreading lies about what socialism is, kind of straw man of socialism.
Mm.
So I don't think it has, totally disappeared from the US politics. And the second question is, do you think
let's take them one at a time, okay? Otherwise I'll forget. Okay, look, I agree with you. Communism is not the bogeyman that it used to be. So it's not what it was in the McCarthy years when the Cold War was at its height. And as an effective scare tactic, I think it's been replaced by the so-called war on terror and fear of migrants and so on. So these are the things which really pulled the fear factor in the last American election. Okay, however, having said that, I certainly agree with you that the word socialist is still a dirty word in the United States. And you call Sanders a socialist. And it's a way of kind of telling people to ignore his views straight away. The Americans don't understand what socialism is. I mean, this is a sweeping generalization, but in many Americans' minds, socialism, Marxism, communism mean the same things. And of course, this is not true. And Bernie Sanders is about as much of a socialist as Angela Merkel. Okay. But the education system is not great in the United States. So people don't understand the important differences and what socialism actually means. There's a debate in the United States, you might know about national healthcare system. There's no national healthcare system in the United States. And many people, you will say, well, in the United States, why don't you have a national healthcare system like they do in Britain or Germany or Australia or, I'm sorry, I don't know what the situation is in Turkey. And people respond, oh, because that's socialism. Look, if that's socialism, then virtually every capitalist country in the world is socialist, right? So people just do not understand what socialism is, and that in every country, the state provides things. It provides services for people like roads, police, schools. Okay, in this country, they don't provide healthcare, but the thought that the government should actually provide a number of social services is something that any American will take for granted, even though they don't think about it for most of the time. So the quick answer is the scare is not what it was, but you're dead right that it's still there.
Okay, so my second question was going to be, I don't know how long you have been in US, but you must have heard the criticisms that are usually voiced by the intellectuals of the right-wing media, or just of the conservatives, that academia or universities are institutions of liberal propaganda, basically, that they're there for the therefore the Democratic Party or whatnot to propagate their own views, and also that they kind of usually feel that they're left out of these spaces, that they're left out of these institutions, that they cannot really enter these institutions since it is very ideologically monolithic. So do you think these criticisms are actually valid concerning the institutions of university?
That's an interesting question. In some sense, this is itself an ideological critique, because a lot of right-wing thinkers don't like universities, just because universities are places where views are often open to discussion and critique, including the views that the right-wing thinkers hold, and they don't like being criticized. Okay. Having said that, I think it is true that academics tend to be more left-wing than right-wing, although this is by no means universal, because there are plenty of well-known academics who are right-wing. So in most universities, right-wing views get a lot of airing. And the most obvious place that happens is in economics departments, where capitalism is pushed for all it's worth, okay? We don't have really a non-capitalist economics because everybody assumes capitalist assumptions such as that growth is good, and that the only thing that is important to economics is how to engender growth. So there are plenty of right-wing views that are aired in universities. So even though the fact that most academics, I think, are probably more left-wing than right-wing, it's certainly not true that they propagate only left-wing views. That's just not true. And it's never been my experience of a university.
Okay, so if I may just make a very
Please.
brief addition. Yeah, I think you're right about economics departments, especially economics textbooks. They are full of they're just ridden with ideological assumptions, or they just take certain things as datums that cannot be challenged simply because of ideological reasons. But you're definitely right about the economics departments.
Yeah, and it's not just economics. I mean, I agree with you. And economics departments are a prime case, but it's not just economics departments. I mean, there are other departments where you will find right-wing views, politics departments, for example, history departments. So it's not true that right-wing views don't get an airing in universities.